Okay, so good evening, everybody. Thanks for being with us, and it's an ongoing process that Save the Frogs India is, along with Save the Frogs, Dr. Kerry Krieger. We are organizing this monthly meetup every month on the last Saturday, and we are happy to have a lot of scientists from India and the neighboring countries as well, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and we are happy to have you as well. So today, um, Avrajjal is here. Avrajjal, I know him uh, long back, and he is an amazing researcher, and he is going to be an amazing guide, I guess, PhD guide. So yeah, his knowledge is very in depth, and he's a very good field biologist, and he knows a lot of things about amphibians and reptiles. So we are really happy to have him today with us. He is a PhD student at the National Institute of Science Education and Research near Bhubaneswar, Odisha, and the PhD is nearing completion. His primary focus is on reptiles, but he has also contributed significantly to amphibian research. Collaborating with Dr. K.P. Dinesh and Dr. Murthy, he described two new skittering frog species, Euphlyctes and Phrynorama, from southern India. He has co-authored a study reporting new distribution points for two rare microhydrid frogs in the Western Ghats and participated in biodiversity surveys in Himachal Pradesh, Wayanad, and Meghamalai Hills, Tamil Nadu, publishing a herpetofaunal checklist for Meghamalai Hills. He also documented a unique behavior of a scattering frog, feeding on a tree frog's foam nest, and compiled a herpetofaunal checklist for his institute's campus, published by the institute's Nature Club. So with this, today, Avrajal will be talking about the amphibians of Indian grassland. India, with its biodiversity hotspots, the Western Ghats in Northeast India, has remarkable endemic biodiversity. But there is a huge land called grassland, and most of the time, as he has said, and as we know, that it is called as wasteland. But it is not wasteland, and a lot of amphibian and other species thrive in this land. So let's hear about the amphibian species or amphibian life of this wasteland, which is not wasteland. Over to you, Avrajal.
Thanks, Shorvanivi. It was a gracious introduction. I don't know whether I've done enough. But yeah, I plan to do a lot in future. I don't particularly work on frogs, but I have been interested in this subject for a long time, and I have friends, some of whom are already here and who have helped me understand the system much better. Uh, I study these lizards called skinks. That's my main thing, and I study their distribution pattern and their biogeography. But frogs have always intrigued me, and I thought that why not talk about a landscape which is often ignored, and hence I decided to pick this topic. So I'll just share my slide. I'll switch off my video, and I'll just share the slides with you. Okay, can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So my topic is amphibians of Indian grasslands. A little bit on the diversity, some of the adaptations and threats to these amphibians and the landscape as a whole. I'll dive straight into the problem actually, and the biggest problem is India not understanding what its open habitats or grasslands are. Um, You see, this problem actually started during the time when the Britishers were in our land. And, in order to build their empire within India, they needed a lot of wood, like a lot of timber. And as a result of which, they depended a lot on the timbers in India's forests. And they chopped down a lot of trees, right? And wherever they saw open lands, they thought that these were degraded forests, and which were earlier occupied by forests, and which have been overutilized by the indigenous people, which is absolutely not true. Grasslands have their own ancient history within India. Not just grasslands, any open habitat. By open habitat, I mean a combination of grasslands, marshlands, rock sheets, and so on. And you can see, like, a cursory search on Google will give you all these different articles which talk about India's confusion regarding grasslands as an ecosystem. Right, so India contains about 24% of its entire area as grasslands, and as compared to forested lands, the grasslands are much vast. It stretches from like the northernmost part of India to southernmost part of India, even in northeastern India as well. And over, I'll just show you the pointer. Yeah, over here, this is a map from a study by Madhusudan and Vanak. And you can see that this yellow shaded regions is where the grasslands are, or the open habitats are. And these red bordered areas are where the protected areas of India are, like the national parks and sanctuaries. And as you can see, almost 90% of these open areas fall outside protected areas. And as a result of which, these areas are under a lot of threat. Recently, Roundglass Sustain came up with this poster highlighting the importance of grasslands of India. And, they have listed out several things, and they've spoken about some of the main types of grasslands over here, and how grassland ecosystems are important, where you find grasslands and threats to grasslands, and so on and so forth, which I'll brush over in the course of this presentation as well. So, as you can see, the main types of grasslands, they have mentioned alpine moist meadows, alpine arid pastures, wet alluvial or terai, savannas, shola grasslands, some of which I'll show you in the next few slides. So, these are the alpine meadows around Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, and Uttarakhand. And you can see it's a beautiful patch of grassland with flowers in it. You also have these dry grasslands in the Trans Himalayas. These are very short, stunted grasslands. You have the terai grasslands, which are spread through much of northern India. This is during the dry seasons, but usually they turn completely green during the monsoons. And they are often associated with large mammals like elephants. And these mammals actually also play a significant role in the maintenance of these vast ecosystems. We also have grasslands in the plains of northern India, which are associated with wetlands. And you see these wet grasslands of often bordering marshy areas and wetlands. Beautiful landscapes, which are under a lot of threat. I'll talk about those as well. Then there are these tropical savannas, which stretch from the western part of India. This is in Rajasthan. Then when you come south, you will see a lot of these prosopis vegetations also strewn with these C4 grasslands, tropical savannas. They take this dramatic landscape as you reach the foothills of the Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats. Beautiful places. Then these are these huge rock sheets associated with stunted grasslands, which you'll see in the Eastern Ghats of India, which is around the eastern coast of India and also in southern eastern India. This beautiful landscape is from a lateritic plateau in Maharashtra. These are these lateritic grasslands which have their own unique biodiversity. I'll probably talk about a few species inhabiting these beautiful landscapes. And then, of course, these extremely high altitude shola grasslands, which are called sky islands, that are present in the Western Ghats. And you'll find these grasslands at altitudes ranging from about 1400 meters to as high as 2600 or 2700 meters, the highest reaches of these Western Ghats. And all these photos that I have shown you, a lot of these are actually, they fall under this category of wastelands. And it's absolutely ridiculous because, as you can see, they are very wild, and, the biodiversity is, quite a lot in these landscapes. So coming to the amphibian diversity hotspots within India, this is a heat map that was generated by amphibiodiversity.org. And we know that these two areas, the Western Ghats and the Northeast India, are the main biodiversity hubs for amphibian species. But if you let go of these two areas, you can see that there is such a large area which is mostly open areas that that is there. And do you want to say that there are no amphibians over here? Of course not, right? I mean, during the southwest monsoons and also the northeast monsoons, the retreating monsoons, these areas actually come alive with cacophony, which almost sound like this. One sec. Yeah. So during the first rains, if you visit a nearby field, you'll hear this kind of a cacophony. And these different frogs will come to life during this time. So within Indian grasslands, there are these groups of amphibians which are very dominant in these landscapes. And one second. uh, which include the Anuran family Bufonidae, which are toads, then Dicroglossids, then ranids, which are called true frogs. Then you have the narrow-mouthed frog called the microhylids, some tree frogs and bush frogs under the family Rhacophorids, and very few species of these fossorial amphibians belonging to the order Gymnophiona, which are called Sicilians, right? So we'll dive straight into these different groups of amphibians and see some of the diversity and the adaptations for a few of these groups as I go through the slides. So I'll start with Bufonidae. These are true toads. This species is, of course, the most common anuran, you can say, of the Indian subcontinent. It's the Asian toad, Dattaphragmus melanostictus. It is found throughout India, and they breed through almost throughout the year, even during winter rains. They really don't. They depend a lot during the monsoons, but even when the rains come off season, these frogs are not at all shy, and they come out and breed during various times. And in some cases, the reproduction is quite crazy, and you'll see more than just two individuals mounting this female over here. These have very dry skin, and these have they're very warty. You can see this large parotid gland over here, which secretes a kind of toxin. And these toads are known to retain water, and as a result of which they can survive dry habitats quite easily. So most toads have this character, and they can also burrow really well. And they lay eggs in like this, like strew of black eggs, which are coated with this jelly-like substance. And these jelly-like substance basically helps the eggs from desiccation in dry areas. And this is an adaptation for most toads that you find, or at least true toads that you find within the Indian subcontinent. And the call is something like this. Yeah, it's a very common call, and I'm sure all of you have heard it if you have ventured out into the field. So coming to the second species of Buffonids, this is marble toad or Dattaphragmus stomaticus. These are mainly found in northern peninsular India, which in both in east and the west of northern peninsular India. And over here you can see that this also has a parotid gland, but it's not as pronounced as in the common toad. The cephalic ridges are almost absent. You don't see them as you would in a normal toad. The males of this species, just like the common toad, also turn yellow during the breeding season, and they often enter people's houses, during the times of their uh, mating season. And they have a call like this. Very insect-like call. This is a character for most toads, actually. Yeah, right. Then we have Dattaphragmus peninsularis, which is also a kind of marble toad. This was a subspecies actually by the name of Dattaphragmus stomaticus peninsularis, and it was distributed in southern peninsular India in the southern states. And this was recently revalidated into a proper species called Dattaphragmus peninsularis. As you can see, as compared to the marble toad like Dattaphragmus stomaticus, it has a comparatively smoother skin. So that's one of the major differences between Dattaphragmus stomaticus and Dattaphragmus peninsularis. I don't have its call. Then we have Dattaphragmus scaber or the dwarf toad. These are very pretty frogs and these are tiny, growing up to about 3.5 centimeters, and that to the female. The females are much larger, as you can see over here. The males are much smaller, and they breed majorly during the first rains, and that's when you will see a lot of them out in the fields and calling. They have very granular bodies, very indistinct parotid glands, and very warty body, right? And they are tiny. They also have a very insect-like call, which goes like this. Very interesting frogs. We have been seeing a lot of these lately. My friend Anurag, who is attending this talk, has shared a lot of his observations as well. And very interesting. We usually earlier thought that these were very rare, but it seems to be very, very common in the Indian grasslands. We then have Dattaphragmus hololius or the Malabar toad. These are not necessarily found in grasslands, but these are peculiar to sheet rocks in the Eastern Ghats and also the drier areas of the Western Ghats, southern Western Ghats. And if you see their body, they have a very dorsoventrally flattened body, and that actually helps them, to fit within like rock crevices in these unique habitats. You can see this is the habitat, one of the habitat photos that I've shared from a paper. And these have comparatively smoother skin. They have very big tympanum, as you can see in this image, quite big, almost of the size of its eyes. And these toads are very threatened in the Eastern Ghats because of rock mining. It's a problem down south wherever there is rocks within peninsular India. And these were thought to be very rare, and these are also very seasonal, only breeding during the first monsoon rains. We then have this Amboli lateritic toad. These are also called the tiger toads. Earlier, they were under the genus Xanthophrinae. Now they are under the genus Beduca. There are lots of these nomenclatural changes, so I might not be able to follow the most recent nomenclatural changes. But currently, this species is actually called Beduca amboli. Earlier, this was called Xanthophrine tigerinus, and all of a sudden, some nomenclatural changes happened, and it's called Beduca amboli. And this is one of the endangered species of toads in India. This is endemic to the lateritic plateaus around Amboli in Maharashtra, southern Maharashtra. And unlike the true toads, they don't lay eggs in strings. They have individual eggs that they lay on water or within ditches in lateritic plateaus. They are very adept at camouflage, and as you can see that this is one toad within a lateritic rock, and if you see it from afar you will not at all notice them. They are very good camouflage. Very interesting toad and very endemic, found within only a small patch. It has a sister species called Beduca coenaensis, or the coena toad, which is found just south of the range of this particular species. I won't show that photo because they kind of look very similar. Coming to the family Dicroglossidae, I will first show the most familiar frog, not the most familiar toad, but the most familiar frog of the Indian subcontinent, which is the Indian bullfrog. These are absolutely massive frogs, and can easily grow to a length of about 7 to 8 inches. During the breeding season, they turn beautiful yellow like this, and they have bright blue pair of vocal sacs, and the juveniles are tiny and they are often very greenish in color with this mid dorsal stripe. And during the first monsoon rains, whenever there are waterlogged fields, you can see these frogs in many numbers, and they will come and they will vocalize, all males, even fighting among each other. This is one short video that I found, and I'll play this. Yep, so that's their call. And you'll find actually many individuals, like 20-30 individuals or even more, in one place. And like they're all trying to find the right female for themselves. So this is a very well-known frog, and one of the conservation concerns regarding this frog earlier was that this was hunted for meat, because as you can see, it has a very fat thigh, and people, absolutely loved frog legs, and they were hunted en masse because of their delicious meat. Now this is stopped because this frog is one of those rare frogs in India which is protected by wildlife law. We then have another species of bullfrog called the Jordan's bullfrog, or Hoplobatrachus crassus. This is much smaller than the Indian bullfrog. And again, during the breeding season, it also turns very yellow. This is rarer than the Indian bullfrog, and you will see them again only during after the first rains. These have dorsal skin folds which are smaller than the Indian bullfrog, and they have a call that resembles a goat's bleat, which sounds like this. Yeah, very much like a goat's bleat. And some of the researchers in Bengal actually has christened it as Chagol Bang, which literally translates to the goat frog in Bengal because of its call, which I think is a very apt name for this frog, by the way. And this is found again throughout peninsular India, even in Sri Lanka, but this is comparatively rare, but it's more common down south in the states of Tamil Nadu. So, yeah, moving on. We have the Indian skittering frog, which is also a very well-known species in the grasslands of India. And you will often see these things floating on surface of water, surface of ponds around grasslands. And they have unique characteristics which help them adapt to these aquatic habitats. You can see that their eyes are located on top of their heads, right? So that when they float, they can actually see above. And you can see this photo over here. They nicely camouflage with decomposing leaves inside ponds as well, with their eyes sticking out like this. And they have completely webbed feet, as you can see over here, which help them with their aquatic lifestyle. They have a very well-known call, which we often hear around ponds, which goes like this.
Common skittering frog.
Yeah, it's a very well-known call, right? Okay. Moving on. So this is one of the videos that I wanted to share with you guys, as Shorbani had mentioned that we had documented a very interesting feeding behavior of this Eucalyptus species near our institute, where one of these individuals, there were many foam nests within a small cave like structure in a hill, and there were multiple individuals of these skittering frogs and many foam nests of Polypedatus or the tree frog species. And this one particular individual was actually eating the eggs from this foam nest. You'll just see it right now. You see there. So these are very, like opportunistic hunters, and they will eat anything in a very, challenging environment, often resorting to eating eggs of other species. So we published this in 2021, which was led by my lab mate Pronoy. Moving to the other big skittering frog, this has been now shifted under the genus Phrynoderma. Earlier, this was Euphlyctus hexadactylus. Now it's Phrynoderma hexadactylum. This is the Indian pond frog, and this is again one of the biggest frog species in peninsular India. These are not found within grasslands, again, often associated with marshlands, associated with grasslands, or big ponds that are nearby grasslands. And these are huge frogs with very similar characters, eye characters. As you can see, again, the eye is located on the top of the head, and they have like huge legs. This was again one of those species which was hunted a lot because of its meat, and the juveniles look like this. This species, we don't see it very often these days, at least around the Bengal plains. And a major reason for which is the land filling of wetlands. These are very peculiar to these wetland habitats, and with with urbanization, uh, these wetlands are being landfilled, and as a result of which we don't see this frog. I don't have the call of this frog, but it has a very unique call as well. Unfortunately, I don't have it. And as Shorvanedi had mentioned, that I was part of a couple of species descriptions within these skittering frogs. It seems like, the notion that the dry areas or the open habitats of India is devoid of much diversity is quite wrong. As seen from this particular group, there seems to be quite a lot of diversity within skittering frogs, and in the last 15 years, about 5 species have been described. And I was part of description of this Kerala skittering frog and this Jaladhara skittering frog, which was led by KP Dinesh from ZSI Pune. Um, so yeah, so these all these frogs are mainly from southern India, mainly from the western coasts of India, and these frogs seem to be preferring, unique river basins, which are yet to be proven scientifically, but maybe someone can try, doing genomic work and seeing whether indeed like different river systems hold, or river basins hold, different species of skittering frogs. So it's an interesting prospect. Coming to the next group of dicroglossids, these are the genera Minervaria and Fagervaria, which we lovingly call as cricket frogs because their calls resemble crickets. And these are a nightmare for batrachologists to identify, even with the sample in their hands. And we often get requests for identifications of these various cricket frogs, and we have no idea. Okay. One of the major characters which defines these cricket frogs is the presence of this line over here. These are called the Fagervarian lines, and this is present in both these genera of frogs. But within these two genera, there are multiple species, and different species are very difficult to tell apart. I have been recently given some information about these frogs by my friend David, and I'll just share those with you, at least a couple of them with you. And so first is this species called Minervaria agricola, or the paddy field cricket frog. This is the most widely distributed cricket frog in peninsular Indian grasslands, which is also found in paddy fields and farmlands. This frog, I'm sure everybody has seen and heard. And if you can see its tubercles are much smaller in size, right? Now keep this in mind, okay, when I show you the next species. So these have tiny tubercles, and this is how it calls. Yeah, so very recognizable call. I'm sure everyone has heard it. And after that, we have this species called Minervaria sayadrensis, or the Sayadri cricket frog, which comes in various morphs. So just imagine the plight of species identification when it comes to this particular species. It's very difficult. It's also very widely distributed, mostly in southern peninsular India, not so much in the north. And these comes in various morphs. And if you see the skin fold in these frogs, these are much longer, right? Which is a very you know very evident difference between this frog and Minervaria agricola. Again, it has a very familiar call. Yeah, and that's the call. I'm sure everyone has heard it. And it has these, black vocal sacs, as you can see in this particular image. Most cricket frogs are also efficient burrowers, and when it's not the rainy season, they will burrow in like diggable soil, but not very deep. They don't go very deep. they will stay in the top layer of the soil. After that, we have this Nilgiri cricket frog, which is one of the bigger species of cricket frogs that is native to the grasslands or the hills of Western Ghats. They don't go very high up, but they go up to around 1,000 meters, 1,200 meters in altitudes. And these are very, robust looking cricket frogs over there. Coming to the next species, we have the Sayadri white-lipped cricket frog. This is found in the grasslands and plains of the western coast of India, and they're very, very common coming out after the rains. And you can see that the males during the breeding season turn a little brighter shade of red, and the females are usually paler as compared to the males. And they will come out, and there will be many, many individuals at the same place, often calling in chorus. And this is their call. Yeah, so this is slightly different than the paddy field dwelling cricket frogs. So, yeah. Okay. Then we have the Orissa cricket frog. This is again one of the bigger species of cricket frogs, restricted to the eastern part of India. And you'll see that these have very strong tubercles, but very short tubercles, and their lip region has these black crossbars, which are one of their identifying characters. They have very robust legs, very good jumpers, and they have quite a different call as compared to the other species of paddy field dwelling cricket or grassland dwelling cricket frogs. Yeah, so it sounds like that. And often when you'll see cricket frogs within a grassland, you will notice that there will be one species or two species of these smaller cricket frogs, and there will be one species of a larger cricket frog. So I'm sure there's some kind of resource partitioning going on, which again has not been proven. But my anecdotal observations have shown me that whenever I'm looking at in one area, there will be one small species and one slightly larger species of cricket frog within the same area. Uh, then the next dicroglossid that I'll talk about is these burrowing frogs called belonging to the genus Sperotheca. This is the Indian burrowing frog called Sperotheca breviceps. This is a catch-all species of burrowing frogs. So whenever people have difficulty in identifying these frogs, they will put them under the bracket Sperotheca breviceps. But the true Sperotheca breviceps is actually from southern India, in the eastern coast of southern India, near Pondicherry, in a place called Tarangambadi or Tranquebar. So these are fossorial frogs. These will only come out after the first rains, and they will mate and immediately go underground. And what helps them dig very efficiently is this particular organ over here. This is called the metatarsal tubercle, and you can see that for this particular species, or rather for this particular genus, this metatarsal tubercle is very pronounced. It's almost shovel shaped, so which helps in burrowing of these frogs. They have dual vocal sacs, and this particular species calls somewhat like this.
Sperotic.
Yeah, they have this. Most burrowing frogs like Sperotheca have very short and stocky body, and yeah, so there exists a lot of taxonomic uncertainties about Indian burrowing frogs at this point of time, and work is being done to resolve the taxonomic shortfalls. Uh, like this particular species called Sperotheca swani is currently under the synonym of Sperotheca breviceps. So this is currently not recognized, but I have spoken to Dr. KP Dinesh, and he believes that this is a valid species and has been wrongfully put under Sperotheca breviceps. And this is particularly found in eastern India and parts of northern India. And if you hear the call of this species, it's very different from the previous species. Right? So this has got no similarity with the previous species, right? And calls are probably one of the main characters which can distinguish these two species. And although I understand that calls can be influenced by environmental factors, these two call characteristics are very, very different. And I'm sure environmental factors are probably not responsible for the difference between these two calls. Within Sperotheca, we have seen recent diversity, recent species descriptions, like these two species called Sperotheca bengaluru and Sperotheca varshavu. And both of these species have been described from the vicinity of Bangalore city. So even in a very populated Indian metropolitan city, you're finding new species, right? Which is very cool. And both these species were again found during the first monsoons and only found for a very short period of time. And the common names of these species are the Bangalore burrowing frog and the Varshavu burrowing frog. The Varsha word is the Indian or the Sanskrit word for monsoons in India. We come to the family Microhylidae, and these are called narrow-mouthed frogs. And the most well-known Microhyla genus species is this species called Microhyla ornata. Again, this is a catch-all species, so whenever we have problems in identifying Microhylas, we often put them under this bracket called Microhyla ornata, and which is wrong in many cases. The true Microhyla ornata is actually from the western southwestern coast of India, although they might have a wider distribution in southern India going up till central India. They are actually not found throughout India. And these very beautiful patterns on their dorsum, as you can see in these images. And they have a very well-known call, which is very loud for these tiny frogs. These are very, very small. They will grow up to like 2 centimeters in length at most. And they have a very, very loud call, such that if 15 or 20 individuals are calling from the same place, you will be having difficulty in hearing yourself. So the call goes something like this.
Microhyla.
Okay, so now that you've heard this call, I want you to focus on this call a little more and hear the duration of each pulse, which will help you identify the next frog a little better. Now, here the duration of each pulse, it will be a little shorter. Right? Okay, now coming to the next species, this is the Nilphamari narrow-mouthed frog. This is the most widely distributed microhyla in South Asia. It's found in sympatry with the previous species from South India all the way to North India and also Northeast India. And listen to its call, okay? Now listen to the pulse of this species. It's slightly longer, very small, very tiny difference, but there is a slight difference. I don't know whether you can understand. Okay, I'll just go back.
Microhyla.
Little short, right? So it's one of the differences between these two groups. Also, Microhyla nilphamariensis is not as ornately patterned as Microhyla ornata, as you can see from these images. They are very, very common after the first rains, and they'll be out about everywhere in paddy fields, in grasslands, everywhere. Then there is Microhyla rubra, which is not as common as the other two species. This is mostly found in southern India, goes up till central India. And they have a very different call as compared to the other two species.
Microhyla rubra.
Very short pulses. Yeah. And Microhyla rubra, the word rubra is Latin for red, so no points for guessing that these are these red microhylid, red narrow-mouthed frogs, which are very reddish in color. And the dorsal pattern is also very less in the species. Coming to the next genus, this is the genus Euperodon. This species is called Euperodon globulosus, or the Indian globular frog. This is a very big frog, completely fossorial. It's totally burrowing. It only comes out after the first rains to breed, and it goes really deep inside the soil with individuals that have been found about 2 meters under the soil. So they are really very good diggers, and these species was often confused with the more popular species Nasicabatrachus ayadrensis. There is some similarity in how they look like, but earlier they were confused. But of course, Nasicabatrachus is now one of the superstars of Indian amphibian world, while this one is not that popular. Although it's a very unique looking frog, and it's a very widely distributed frog found throughout the Indian peninsula, also in northeast and northern India. And of course, no points for guessing why it's called the globular frog or the balloon frog. Under any threats, this will bloat itself up like this. And, this is the um, character that helps them burrow in the soil proficiently. This is again the metatarsal tubercle, a very well developed shovel shaped metatarsal tubercle. They have very little webbing in their feet, and they have very tiny feet, very short, stocky feet. They are not much of a jumper. Okay, they won't really jump. They will just try to like lethargically walk away from you if they feel threatened. And they lay their eggs over water, and you can see this tiny eggs which are surrounded by this coating of jelly like coating, and they will lay a lot of eggs on the water surface. And their call is something like this, a very evident call, almost like a gong like sound. All right. Watch out for this frog near paddy fields after the first rains. Very unique looking frogs. I really like these frogs. Coming to its sister species, this is the marble balloon frog, Euperodon cystoma. This is not as big as the Indian globular frog, but is probably prettier. And definitely, it is prettier. It has these marble-like patterns over its dorsum, and again, very similar body pattern, body type as the Indian globular frog. Although these also have very well-developed metatarsal tubercles, they don't go as deep as the Indian burrowing frog, but nonetheless, they're excellent burrowers. And after the first rains, there will be hundreds of individuals that gather together, and they'll start calling in a chorus. Yeah, this sound gets very deafening when you're near this entire chorus, and like 50, 60 frogs are calling at the same time. And you know what? Some of these frogs have this ingenious way of finding out how they can amplify their calls. So, near my institute, often when there will be ditches dug up near the roads, these frogs will go in those ditches and amplify their call. They will not call from the field as such. You'll find like hundreds of individuals in these ditches, like this video that you just saw, and they will call from there so that their calls are amplified. Very unique character of this particular species. These are mainly found in the eastern coast, also southern India, and there are some reports from northeastern India as well, but they're very rare in northeast. And one study which was done by Prasad et al. In 2022 showed that when these two species, Euperodon globulosus and Euperodon cystoma, exist together, they have niche separation. Not just are their calls different, but they call from very different places within a puddle as well. So Euperodon globulosus calls very from close to the bank, and if there's a big enough puddle, Euperodon cystoma usually goes at the center and calls from there. So this was a very unique study about niche partitioning, both vocal as well as spatial niche partitioning between these frogs whenever they are found together. Coming to this next species, which is Euperodon taprobanicus, or the painted globular frog. This is also a very well-known frog in the Indian subcontinent, and a very beautiful one at that. It's very common, again found after the first rains. And although these also are very good burrowers, they are also excellent climbers. And if you see this characteristic, if you see the digits, you will see that their digits are dilated, at least the front toes are dilated. So whenever you see a frog with its front toes dilated, that's a character that indicates a climbing behavior, and this particular species has that. The other euperodons don't have it. I'll just show it to you. So if you see, this is cystoma. You can see the fingers, which are not at all dilated. These are kind of bent, like like other frogs. These are not dilated. These are not at all climbers. And apart from bloating itself up and defending itself, these have other various defensive characteristics. What it does is that it uses its lower jaw and kind of covers its upper jaw with the lower jaw. It has this very weird looking appearance when it does that. And when you touch its snout like this, when you keep on touching its snout, it will raise the posterior part of its body and will show these two red spots, which probably act like false eye spots and maybe deters predators. Very unique frog, very cool frog. Excellent climbers. They're known to climb coconut trees or even smooth walls of buildings. And you'll often find these frogs in the crevices of trees. The juvenile is very different looking from the adult. And over here, you can see the metatarsal tubercle is not as well developed as the other two euperodons. And it has a very, a call that you must have heard after the first rains. I'll play it. Yeah, like a very morose call. Very sad looking call, or sad hearing call. Very unique frog, and a very well known frog from the Indian grasslands. Um, Followed by this species called Euperodon variegata, which is called the marbled narrow-mouthed frog. Uh, this is not the marbled globular frog. Also, it looks like one. But if you see again its toe characters, you'll see this is the front toe, and again it is dilated, indicating that it can also climb to a certain extent. And these are much smaller than Euperodon cystomas, much smaller. Often associated with termite mounds, you'll find these things eating termites by climbing termite mounds, and they will call from near water or almost in water. And a very interesting character of this particular frog is that it shares its niche with heterometrine scorpions in some parts of India. So they seem to have a symbiotic relationships where the frog maybe eats smaller insects to keep the niche clean, and the scorpion protects it. But I don't understand why the scorpion itself does not eat this frog, which is very unique. And I don't have an answer to this, but maybe someone can look it up. This is one of those only frogs which shares its, like niche with a giant scorpion like this. And this is the call for this frog, very loud. Yeah, and this has this, single vocal sac. So most microhylids, or rather all microhylids, have a single vocal sac as compared to dicroglossids, which have a pair of vocal sacs. If you remember the Sperotheca calling I had showed you. Moving to Ranidae, this is Hylarana malabarica. Not so much diversity within this particular family, but a very unique looking frog, very easy to identify. A medium-sized frog with orangish dorsum color, a huge tympanum, almost as big or even bigger than the eye, and a very frog-looking frog, right? I mean, long legs, long digits, and these are the fungoid frogs are very common in the western coast of peninsular India. And earlier they were thought to have a much wider distribution, but later it got split into two species, with Hylarana malabarica being presently restricted to the southern part of India, in the southwestern coasts of India. And the reason why it's called a fungoid frog is so whenever it is under threat, it kind of emits a very musky fluid, and it has that smell, and that's why this name called the fungoid frog. The call is like this.
Hyla
Yeah. And this is the other fungoid frog that I'm talking about, the common name for which is very you know, self-explanatory why it's called the widespread fungoid frog. It has a very large distribution as compared to the Malabar fungoid frog, and this extends from like till from Maharashtra all the way to like central India, which has a much wider distribution, very similar in habits to Hylarana malabarica as well. We then have this species called Hylarana tytleri, or the yellow striped frog. These are not specific to grasslands, but they're found near marshlands, adjoining grasslands. And this is a very beautiful photograph by Sajib Biswas from Bangladesh. And this is exactly the habitat of this particular frog, right? This frog has this greenish yellow dorsum with off white to white lateral stripes, a huge tympanum, as you can see here, and they're found in eastern and northeastern part of India. Again, the kind of habitat that they are inhabiting is slowly disappearing because of construction projects in this part of the country. Coming to Rhacophoridae, or the climbing frogs, or the tree frogs, bush frogs, these are not essentially found in grasslands, but within grassland you'll see trees, and inevitably there will be tree frogs in those areas. And although there might be a few species of polypedates, this is the most well known. Again, a catch-all phrase called Polypedatus maculatus. This has a pan-Indian distribution, but probably many cryptic species are part of this species complex. And of course, they are climbers, as you can see, evidenced by this presence of clear discs in the front as well as the back legs. They have a foam nest like structure. That's how they lay their eggs, and there are several hundred eggs within these foam nests. And the foam nest actually again protects the eggs from drier environments. And again, this has a very unique call, which is like a gargle.
Polypedrock.
Yeah, very gargle-like sound. A very unique tree frog is found in the Terai grasslands, marshlands of northern India and eastern India, called Polypedatus tenuatus, or the Terai tree frog. So it is not a very common frog at all. It's actually quite rare, and it's found in the Terai regions of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, with one anecdotal report from South Bengal, within the vicinities of the city of Kolkata. And we don't know exactly how it turned up in that place. It can be introduced because there is a military air base over there, and it can well be possible that that could have hitchhiked from northern West Bengal or from UP, Bihar, that region. Because there is no intervening population of this particular frog between South Bengal and North Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. So it's again a very interesting looking frog, striped in appearance, and they're not like tree frogs. They're found in reeds, very much like Hylarana tytleri. So actually, these two species in that particular place, they are syntopic. They're found in the same habitat. Coming to this, another unique genus and species, this is Chirixella cymus, or the Annandale's pygmy tree frog. These are very tiny, which can be about 1.5 to 2 centimeters in length. That's the adult size. And they have, if you look at these images in the image below, if you look at this front toes, like these two outer toes and these two inner toes, these are juxtaposed. These are opposable thumbs, right? And they have developed this character in order to grip uh, tiny straws of grasslands, tiny straws of grasslands. So that's this unique character particular to these grassland dwelling species. These are not just found in grasslands, but also in people's gardens. But like the major habitat of this particular genus is in grasslands. And you can see over here, there's one female protecting its, foam nest over here. And it has a very unique call like this. Very tweak-like call, tweak. Yeah. So this particular species is found in East India and Northeast India, and there are a few other species which are found mostly in the North Indian and Northeast Indian region. again, this I feel that this is one of those species which is under a lot of threat because of urbanization, as like these wet grasslands in the lower floodplains of Bengal and Assam and all these places are under severe threats from urbanization. Coming to the bush frogs, I'll start off with the most beautiful looking bush frog in the Western Ghats. This is Rhacophoridae resplendens, or the resplendent bush frogs. According to me, this is probably the most beautiful frog in India. Very small, very, very glandular. Probably these glands help them live in that kind of an environment. These are found in very high altitudes of the Western Ghats, up to about 2,600 meters, 2,650 meters. And, very cold, grassy habitats, and very glandular body. They have very weak leg musculature. They don't really jump. They almost walk on grass blades. And like, so all bush frogs have, like direct development. So these frogs will lay eggs inside grass clumps like this. And, like the fully formed individuals will kind of look like this, and they'll come out as miniaturized uh, versions of the adult. And extremely unique frogs. These are endemic to the southern Western Ghats, the high altitudes of the Annamalai and the Palni Hills, which are the part of the highest elevations of the southern Western Ghats. It calls like this, very unique call. So whenever you're visiting places like Munnar or Kodaikanal, like the really high elevations, going above 2,000 meters or 2,500 meters, and in pristine grasslands, you can probably keep an ear out for this call. Yeah, very, very cool frogs. And it shares its space with this another frog called Rochester dubua, or the Kodaikanal bush frog. These come in various morphs. Okay, this is just one color variant, but they come in various color variants, and these are also very glandular. Again, a character probably which helps them dwell in those cold grasslands. But I don't know exactly how these glandular structures or the glands help them bear with this cold environment. Then we have the Nilgiri grassland bush frogs, Rhacophoridae primorhamphi, very recently described species, endemic to the grasslands of the Nilgiri hills, above 1,900 meters or 2,000 meters. Very unique looking frog. And one of the characters of these grassland dwelling bush frogs is that in order to escape, what they do is that they'll curl up almost like a ball, like half ball like structures, and they'll fall within grass clumps to escape. So it's a very unique character of this particular frog. Okay. And there is Rhacophoridae charius or Seshachar's bush frog, which is endemic to the Nilgiri Wayanad region. And again, it's a grassland dwelling frog, looks like this, and kind of walks on small bushes and grasses. And it has a call which sounds like this.
Bush frog.
Very monotonous, single note, very bush froggy like call. And they call almost like throughout the monsoon season, even after that. This is the indigo bush frog, Rochester indigo, which is endemic to the highest altitudes of the Kudremukh hill. It's only found there. And it's named Rochester indigo because of this beautiful indigo color that is present at the back of its thigh or under the thigh. Also, its belly, maybe. And these are unique to the grasslands of this place. Very beautiful looking frog, green in color. And it's syntopic with this another species called the montane bush frog, or Rhacophoridae montanus. And this frog it's probably found at the junction between the stunted forests and the grasslands of the Kudremukh hills. I will not delve too much into Sicilians because I don't have a lot of knowledge on these particular rare group of amphibians. Probably Varadgiri will be a better candidate for giving a separate talk on Sicilians. but there are these unique
Yes, we
groups of
invited Bharat for that.
Oh,
Bharat
okay,
has
okay.
already given a
Yeah.
talk. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Then great. I don't have to dwell too much. But there are a couple of genera which are restricted to the lateritic grasslands of Maharashtra, like this Indotyphlos maharashtriensis, uh, which is endemic, to those southern parts of Maharashtra lateritic grasslands. And also this Gegeniophis seshachari, which is the Sechachar sicilian. This is the only species of Viviparous sicilian. It gives birth to live youngs in Asia. I think it's the only species in Asia, if I'm not wrong, and a very unique animal. And coming to some of the threats to grassland ecosystems, first is, of course, landfilling and urbanization. These are causing havoc in at least the lower Bengal plains. And you can see that these are the sludges which are used to completely cover up grasslands. It's absolutely terrible. And after that, you'll see little development happening with roads and stuff, and before you know it, there are buildings, and entire habitats are completely wiped out. It is probably the major threats to grassland ecosystems. And of course, diversion for agriculture, large so because grasslands are treated as wastelands, and of course we need food because we are a hugely populous country. We divert large swathes of land to agricultural lands mainly used for paddy. And but a lot of frogs tend to do very well within agricultural setups as well. But what happens is that when you use too much pesticides, that can have like a uh, you know like an effect, downstream effect on these frogs. And in many places we are seeing a lot of these male frogs with deformities, like this anophthalmic toad. This is an anophthalmic cricket frog. This is a Microhyla nilfamariensis with deformed legs. And this is a bullfrog which has severe problems with its mouth and eyes. And I wonder how it actually grew up to its adult size. So probably because of contaminants, these frogs are getting affected. There has been no clear-cut study about how these are affecting the amphibian populations within India, but it can be taken up by students later on. And of course, the hilly grasslands of Eastern Ghats and the Deccan Plateau are under threats to mining, where entire hills are wiped off, within a matter of days. And these are entire hills which are disappearing. So you can understand the plight of the amphibians, or any animals actually living in these areas. And this is something that I actually spoke in the initial slides, which is replacing native shola grasslands with, tea, eucalyptus, acacia, and pine trees. And these have been going on during the colonial times. Okay. And all these areas that you see are in the Western Ghats. And these are not its natural vegetation. Okay. So these are all invasives. And there will be, like tourist destinations that will have only pine trees, in Kodaikanal and Nilgiris, and people actually flock to these areas. Even shooting Bollywood and like South Indian movies are shot at these locations, and they actually don't know the treasure that they have in these unique grassland ecosystems. So this is a major problem that is there in the Western Ghats. And of course, compensatory afforestation. I don't know if you guys have seen this recent news where, how the loss of a tropical forest in the Nicobar Islands could end up funding a jungle safari in Haryana. Now, Haryana is a very typical tropical savanna-like place, right? And, the forest department or the government, they're thinking that, they'll plant a forest in that place, and that's how they will compensate for the loss of forest, like a tropical forest in the Nicobar. So these things keep on happening. And my friend Anurag, who is actually a divisional forest officer in Odisha, he's here, and I'm sure that he will know these things much better. And but this is one of the major problems that are currently persisting in the Indian open habitats. I just want to put a word out for this organization called Conservation India, which is doing their bit to highlight the grasslands of India with several posters that they're coming up on the different groups of animals that inhabit these grasslands. And probably because I saw their effort, that's why I decided to probably make a presentation on this topic. And they're doing some really cool work. You can visit their Instagram page and you can see not only are they doing it on frogs, but on every group of animals, including birds, reptiles, and mammals. So please give it a look. And with that, I end my talk. And I want to thank Save the Frogs India and Save the Frogs organization, especially Shorbanidhi for inviting me to give this talk, even though I'm not like an amphibian guy per se. Conservation India for allowing me to give for giving me materials and helping me during the nascent stage of this talk. Robin Panjikar, who has shared a lot of these calls with me. These calls are this initiative called Mandu Kawani, and Robin has really helped me. And of course, David, Sandeep, and Praveen, I have had quite a few discussions about amphibians with these people, and they have helped me understand the system much better. Lipsa for designing the cover slide. She's an excellent illustrator, and you can use. You can actually visit her Instagram page and ask her to illustrate for you. And all photographers that I've used photos from, I have credited them in the talk itself. And yeah, so that's it. Thank you, everyone.
This is a wonderful talk. Wonderful, wonderful talk. Thanks a lot, Avrajjal, coming and
Thank you.
giving a talk to us, and we are really enriched. And as we know that there are a lot of open areas in India, and which is a home for a lot of species, but
Right.
it's being converted or it's being used for some other reasons or filled up because we are losing our biodiversity for that. And for that, I think we need more and more awareness from the ground to the top level so that people can
Right, right.
understand the importance of each and every habitat that we have. Each and every habitat is unique in their own way.
Absolutely.
So we do not have to
Absolutely.
alter the thing. So basically, this talk is an eye opener, and soon we will upload it in YouTube and we'll share the link with you all. And thanks to Avrajjal for your wonderful talk. And if you have any
Yeah.
questions, the participants, you can shoot. We have time for at least 5 questions, not more than that, because we are running out of time. One question in chat. So it was a very nice, informative talk. In any book for enthusiasts on frogs? Probably
Oh,
there is
this is a
not
very,
one
very
book.
big problem.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think there are great books, but KV Guru Raja, I think he was also invited for one of the talks. KV Guru Raja has a book, a pictorial guide to the frogs of the Western Ghats. Of course,
Yes.
it's now a little old, probably 10, 15 years old, but he
Mhm.
still has that pictorial guide, which is quite helpful. Surya Ramachandran and David Raju, they have come up with pictorial guides for the wildlife of South India and wildlife of
Yes.
Central India, where they have a lot of photographs for these frogs. So you can see photographs, but not any descriptive books as such. I think that's something that we are majorly lacking, and I'm sure something will come up soon. Not from me, but there are other people. I'm
And
sure they
I
will be
think
coming up with some book.
yes, yes, yes. The main problem with the amphibians is like the nomenclatural changes that keeps on
Yes, it
happening,
keeps on
and the
happening.
previous, yeah,
Yes,
yeah. So I
keeps on
naturally
happening.
see is a good website to consult with if you want to identify
Yes,
the frogs from your
yes,
picture. Yes, so that's a very
yes.
good
Unless
thing.
unless they're cricket frogs. Cricket
Yes,
frogs
of
are very
course.
difficult.
That's a nightmare. That's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Polomi Murmo Momo Kisa. As an indigenous student from Bangladesh, I enjoyed it. Thank you. Any more question? I guess participants are overwhelmed with the talk. And if you have any question, you can shoot it to me, and I will send it to Avrajal. I'm sharing my email ID.
Hey, I think there's one question from Swapnil. He says that how exactly do frogs use their metatarsal tubercles to burrow? Um, yeah, I don't have a video, but these
Yes.
metatarsal tubercles are almost like shovels. What they
Mhm.
will do is they'll push their hind limbs against the soil, and those metatarsal tubercles will actually help remove the soil, and that's how they go inside, like they will go like from the back and then inside, that kind of an approach. It's a very unique process. I don't have a video, but I know you personally, so if I get a hold of a video, then I'll probably share it with you.
And the falls along with your pictures that helped us a lot to uh, you know differentiate from one species to another, even if it looks alike. So
Yeah.
it's a very helpful tool for the amphibians to identify the species in field if you have previous knowledge of its call.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have shared my email ID. If anyone wants to join our WhatsApp group, Save the Frogs India WhatsApp group, so please drop your number. I can add you to our Save the Frogs India group, WhatsApp group. Uh, so with this, I am concluding our first uh, session of this year. Wish all a very happy new year, and we are almost at the end of January, but still there are 11 months left. So happy 11 months ahead of you. Uh, Thanks for joining, and we will come up with the next talk with another speaker, and we'll share it with in our Facebook and Instagram. So basically, stay tuned, and I will request all of you to join our next talk and bring your friends, another enthusiast, if they want to listen to us. So someone does not have to be a very good researcher or something like that. Any enthusiast can join the talk and enjoy and listen and can do something on their own if they want to. So, thanks for being with us and a very good night to all of you. We'll
Good
meet
night,
in the
everyone.
next session. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Sharvanidhi, once again.
Thank you, Avrajjal.